For those of you who don't know, my name is Gunjan, and I work here at CIE, and I am incredibly delighted to be chairing the CIE Research Cafe today. It's one of my first official CIE Research Cafe, with an external speaker. So, join me in welcoming Dr. Kartika Bhatia. She's an applied economist specializing in evaluating education programs in low and middle income countries. Her research focuses on helping practitioners and policymakers translate evidence into actionable policy. That's going to be incredibly relevant. People in this room. Okay. She is currently an assistant professor at the Center for Global Learning at Coventry University and serves as a research advisor to Aspire, a data-driven social enterprise where she previously worked as their research director. I was telling you that I almost went and worked with Aspire before starting my PhD, but that's a bit too early to talk about that. She also worked as a research economist with the World Bank in the Middle East and North Africa unit for 3 years. There's lots to learn from Kartika and see what's going on with her work in research. She's also being joined by Mr. Dayaram, who's on Zoom, who's joining us on Zoom. And Dayaram is the founder and executive director of Aspire. And you'll be talking about Aspire's work today. Yes. So I think Dayaram will join us.
Dayaram, can you hear us? You're on mute.
Is it okay?
Yes, we can hear you. We don't see you.
Kartika. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes.
Yes, we can see you and hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone.
Dayaram sir, do you want to sort of say a few lines about you? Just introduce yourself, make a very brief introduction.
Okay. So, Aspire, basically, we set up this simply by almost 2 decades of work with the government and NGOs working on the ground and at a national level. I realize, and some of our friends, that India, as you all know, we have a divided education system. There's one for the rich and the another for the poor and marginalized. Though the numbers for the marginalized schools, that 70% people access public school, which is a government school, and around 30% population access private schools. This has been a challenge forever that one has been trying to improve public school system. And it's very clearly evident, though the data will suggest the other way around, but the public system has been deteriorating. And I myself studied in a government school in a village, and I see my village school and I find that probably there are more teachers, more buildings, but less teaching and less learning happening. It has been a concern. And these 70% people also belong to, if you look at, they are the unorganized section of the people, marginalized population, SC/ST, OBCs, minorities, and in economic terms, they're the, I'll say the low income category who can't afford private schools. So today, the choice is a private school for everyone, English medium school. Those who remain with the public system of education, that's the government school, basically can't afford to pay the fee. And if there is a family has an option and they have to send one child, then girls are sent to government school and the boys are sent to private school, if at all a family can afford to pay the fee. This division has created such a big problem. I won't get into that detail, but with this concern where the government school system can be reformed, and every child, because we have a Right to Education Act, can we ensure that every child join school and complete 10-year education. This has been the main concern. With this we started. In a public discourse, everybody talks differently, but in private, there is a kind of defeatist mindset. Everybody thinks that for a variety of reasons, you can't reform this government school system. They will quote about teachers union, political interference. So this was the question. We started this. And today we are working with more than 6,000 schools and 7,000 plus Anganwadis. On our experience as we last 10 years journey, very rewarding that we see the schools are changing, the local communities, panchayats, everyone will be talking about that. So this is a context in which it was set up, and this is a target in areas that we work. We ensure that every child comes to school and they complete 10-year schooling. These are the most marginalized population in India, the tribal belt. You can also call Central India tribal belt, which covers 10 states of India. These are hills, plateau, and forested regions. The loss of mines and minerals, everything. If you look at in terms of resources, very rich, mineral-rich area, but very poor people, very marginalized, excluded people. So area that we work, and this has been an experiment to prove that every child can be brought to school. It's doable, it can be done, and it should be done. I'll just leave it, Kartika, here, and let's, yeah.
Thank you, Ramji. So over to you, Kartika. You're going to present for about 45 minutes.
Yeah,
And then we'll have a buzz and then open it for
All right,
questions and
okay,
discussion.
okay. Thank you, Gunjan, for that introduction. And thank you, Simon, Barbara, Julia, I see. Or I just saw. Okay, sorry. Thank you for inviting us to talk about our work. We are very delighted to share the work that Aspire is doing on the ground. And so, Aspire is a non-profit organization that works towards making education socially relevant, inclusive, and keeping in pace with 21st century challenges. Like Ram pointed out, we work with communities in rural and tribal areas of India, and we work to strengthen the government school system in these areas. So at the heart of our work, we have 4 core beliefs. One is that education is a public good and primary responsibility of the state. As Ram pointed out, that 70% kids in India are still dependent on the government school system. So making sure that this system is functioning well is very important. Disempowered teachers cannot create empowered children. Communities have the desire and potential for change. And finally, all children have unlimited potential for growth. So this is sort of challenging this assumption that children from certain caste, class, or communities, they don't want to learn, or they don't want to go to school, they want to work or do other things. So if you look at our current coverage, we reach out to 1.5 million children. This is in the age group 3 to 16 years. Our work is spread around 7 districts in 4 states. So this is Orissa, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and West Bengal, eastern part of India. We work in 39 blocks, and a block is roughly 125 to 150,000 population. That unit is important, as you will see later on. We are working currently with close to 6,500 government schools and 7,500 early childhood development centers. The ECD centers are also government run. So before we go on into what exactly do we do, and actually there pointed out several of these things, let's talk a little bit very briefly about what exactly is the problem here. So the Central Indian Tribal Belt, it is spread across 10 states in India. And in 2011 census, there were roughly 81 million tribal people living in this area. So now I think it's going to be around 100 million tribal people, not the total population. And this is one of the poorest regions in India. And if you compare it to other regions and states, you will see stark disparities in education, health, all development indicators. And, this area is forested. It's rich in natural resources, it's rich in mineral resources, but it has this resource curse. 90% of tribal population still remain rural, and they are engaged in very primitive forms of agriculture. So you will not find tractors, machines, advanced forms of irrigation, and they're still using very traditional ways of farming in this area. If you think about the political system, the tribal communities are quite marginalized. They don't have a lot of voice and say in decision making at sort of any level of administration. And children in this area, so they are mostly first generation learners. Their parents have not completed full years of 10 years of schooling. And the school system in this area is characterized by that there are too few schools, and there's not enough resources being put into this region for education. And second is inside the classroom, the teaching pedagogy is quite archaic. It's very rote-based learning. And of course, there's social discrimination in schools and in classrooms. This area, especially for tribal population, the dropout rates is quite high if you compare it to the rest of India. And because of this, many children actually go into labor or they migrate out of this area for work or other reasons. And even the very few who do manage to graduate, when they come back to this region, it is such an inert, stagnant environment that they don't have a lot of opportunities for either personal development or community development. So as an organization, our aim or our goal is to sort of break this cycle and using education as a pivot. I mean, there are several things that you could do, to counter this situation, but for us, Aspire, we have chosen education as a pivot. So this was just shared with me today morning. So we did a household survey in one of the districts. It was 280,000 households in West Singhbug district in Jharkhand. This was done earlier in this year. And this district is one of the most disadvantaged districts in India. All 0 to 18 children were surveyed and their education status was recorded. And as you can see, in the age group 3 to 5, almost 25% of children are not going to preschools. In 6 to 14 age group, again, like 22% of children. And in terms of number, like 52,000 children are right now out of school. And for the age group 15 to 17, close to 19,000 children are out of school. So the numbers are huge and it's a real big challenge in this area. So what is our education program? As Dharam said that we have been informed by past education reform experiments and efforts done in India. And based on that, we have developed a replicable and scalable model of education change. So the goal of the program is to provide all children with equitable and high quality secondary school education, so that's grade 10 at least, through a revitalized government system. And there are 5 key objectives of the program. One is obviously universalization of schooling. So everybody should be in school in the age group 3 to 16. Second is schools should be effectively managed and there should be a vibrant learning environment in the classroom. And we do this through empowering teachers and communities. Third is transversal skills for learners to adapt to a challenging future and a tech-driven future. Fourth is, because this is a tribal dominated part of India, and just in one state alone, you'll find 60 plus tribes, and each of them have their own culture, languages, dialects, and so on. It's very important for us to prioritize integration of local languages, knowledge, and culture into the learning process. And finally, we work in a saturation mode, and which basically means that we are reaching out to every village, school, and child. And our hope is that working at scale can trigger change, at higher levels, at state level and so on. So before I talk about what exactly do we do, there are a couple of principles that we follow when we set up a project in a new area. You could also think of them as programmatic strategy. The first is cover an entire administrative unit. So usually a block, which is, like I mentioned, 150,000 people, or a district, which is 5 to 10 times that number. And this is done to engage all actors who are working in the education ecosystem. So we never go ahead and just work in some schools or we take a few villages. It is always going to be a whole complete unit. And once we are working in a complete unit, we reach out to every child, school, and village. So even though I'm talking about tribal communities, but in this area, you also have people from lower caste, other backward caste, and obviously general population. So we reach out to every child, school, and village. The third is that we run multiple interventions simultaneously on 3 aspects of education. So access to school, learning, quality learning, and effective school governance. So access, learning, and governance. And I'll talk a little bit more about this. Our projects have a very long-term perspective. So the project cycle is 7 to 10 years, which is actually much more than a typical NGO which is working in, in these kind of situations. And this is done because it really takes 10 years to make sure a whole generation completes secondary school. And number 5, we hire almost exclusively local. So we will hire within few kilometers. 99% of the staff comes from the community in itself. And this is done for 2 reasons. One is we do want to build capacity within the community. And the second is that we want to ensure ownership of the program once we exit from that area. This is part of the exit and sustainability strategy. And finally, the community and the Gram Panchayat. So a Gram Panchayat in India is a village council. So one Gram Panchayat would have 2 to 5 villages roughly. They will be at the forefront of program implementation. So what this means is, let's say tomorrow we think that let's do a summer camp in schools to just fortify foundational math or language skills of kids. So instead of Aspire going to the education department and putting that request, it will be, so we will have a meeting with the community and with the village council, and if everybody is on board, they do the application, they will send the request to the state education department and not us. And again, I think this is part of the sustainability and exit strategy. Once we are not here, they should be trained enough in these kind of things to handle the program also. So we started in 2015 from 6 blocks, and over the years, we have added new areas, new blocks, schools, and so on. So currently, like I mentioned, we have 39 blocks, 1.5 million children, and 6,500 government schools. And each of these phases have been funded by different corporates or foundations. Our biggest funder is Tata Steel Foundation, which is Tata Steel are basically, because this is mining area and they are one of the biggest corporates in that area. So let's look at what exactly do we do, the 3 pillars. So the first one is access. Just a reminder, so the whole point of access is that every child should be in school. So what we do is, let's say we go to a new area, we have a new block. Within the first year, we will do a household survey, which includes a child census. So all children 0 to 18 are surveyed and their education status is recorded. Based on that, we have a list of who is out of school and who has never been enrolled into school. And now, depending upon how long has the child dropped out of the schooling system, they are put into bridging courses. So let's say a child is out of school, but only since a few months, so they are put into what we call non-residential bridging centers. Here, they are going to sort of fill their learning gaps, and then they are re-enrolled back into schools. And if a child has been out of school for more than a year and long dropout, then they are put into residential bridging course centers where they stay with us for 6 to 8 months, because the learning deficit is quite huge for some of these kids. They are mostly kids who have been engaged in labor or have been out of school for several years. Sometimes they are orphaned or abandoned. So for these kind of, last mile kids, they stay with us and they fill in their learning deficit for 6 to 8 months, and then they are re-enrolled back into school. So, and of course, younger kids who are 5, 6, 7 years old, who have never been to school, we immediately enroll them into a grade 1, because they have not really started their education journey. So from the household survey, from the child census, we create village education registers, and we actually give this information back to the community. And every 3 months, the community and the schools update this information, because it doesn't make sense that we just enroll them back and we never monitor what's happening, because some of them might just fall out of school again. So every 3 months, there's an update done to this census, and whoever is out of school is again, the whole process repeats. And once everybody is in school and attending regularly, and this status has been maintained for several months, the community and the village councils declare that area as child labor-free zone. So it's a big celebration that they do, and we've had a whole district which just became a child labor-free zone. So that's a huge milestone in this area. So all of this process isn't done in a day. It takes, like 1 to 3 years to make sure that this is happening. Then we have the learning. So I'm going to shift this to this side. Yeah. Okay, then we have our learning vertical. So in the learning vertical, there are two big touch points. One is the primary grades. So the Government of India has a foundational learning program, and we support government teachers in running. Okay. Do you want to take it down? It should be. Awesome. You can't hear. Okay, I continue. Yeah, so we support government teachers in actually running or implementing the foundational learning curriculum in schools, and I will talk a bit more about this in the next few slides. And then we have the middle and high school touch points. So in middle and high school, we don't really focus on curriculum because there are too many subjects to touch upon. What we do here is that we have partnered with several knowledge institutes, nationally and also internationally, which have partnered with us to develop content and also teacher training modules. And this is focusing on key competencies and life skills for adolescents. So, for example, transversal skills like critical thinking, problem solving, or 21st century skills like computational thinking, communication, organization skills. So we have a series of tasks and we have a series of trainings that we have developed, and also science and math. So those are the two subjects that we focus in middle school. So in primary schools, we are actually dealing with curriculum, and we are helping the government teachers teach that curriculum in an improved way. But in middle and high school, we only work with developing core competencies in this age. And like I mentioned, in everything that we do integrate local language, culture, and knowledge into both the content and also our trainings. An issue in this area is that when a child comes to school, especially a tribal kid, most likely he or she would be speaking in another dialect, and the language that's used as an instruction in school would be the state language. And it takes so a lot of children are actually left behind of learning because of that discrepancy. So we work a lot in bridging this gap, and we have apps and also other variety of resources which help kids in bridging this gap. And then there's a functional library that we set up in every school, and then the kids and the teachers live together. Okay. Under the governance vertical, the biggest thing that we do is that, so each school has a school management committee. This would be roughly 15 to 20 people. 80% of them are parents of the kids who are currently going to school, and the rest would be a representative from, like the teachers or from the students' union, and then there might be a representative from the village council and so on. So we train school management committee members, the headmasters and teachers, in using tools, training, and for planning and monitoring progress. So one of the biggest things that we do is we help these school management committees prepare school development plans. So every 3 years, a school is supposed to prepare a plan. They have to do a needs gap assessment, what is missing in your school and how much you need it. So this was completely, non-functional, defunct in almost all schools in India. So we have helped these school management committees in preparing these plans and then submitting them to the village council so that the councils can then incorporate them into their annual budgets and fiscal plans, and hopefully more resources come into these schools. And then we also work with young people and women from self-help groups, which are basically the microfinance groups, and they are being trained as advocates for child rights and for education. So this is done, to change the social norm in this area. And we also work with village elected leaders. The first training is mostly about orienting them on their roles and responsibilities, on India's right to education framework, on basic child rights and so on. But then advanced training is on, basically fiscal planning and budgetary planning, like how can you make plans which incorporate the needs of the community and also increase budget spending on education and other important social sector components. And then finally, we also work with the administration, communities, and children to end child labor and child marriages. which is an issue in this area. So I put this separately, but because this is one of our newer interventions. So the Government of India has a scheme called Integrated Child Development Service, which addresses the needs of children under the age of 6 years and also pregnant and lactating mothers and adolescent girls. So we are working with the system, with the ICDS system structure, and we are supporting them in delivering 6 services. So this is nutrition, preschool education, health education, immunization, health checkups, and so on. And separately from that, we also do awareness drives in the village, in the community for the beneficiaries. We train and orient ICDS workers. And then again, this structure particularly compared to the schooling structure, it has severe manpower gaps. And we have sort of developed innovative ways in which we could involve community to fill in these gaps and do some of the services that the ICDS worker is supposed to do, but cannot do because it needs too much work. Okay, so I'm just gonna recap so it's fresh in everybody's mind. We select a block or a district. The whole education program takes about 7 to 10 years to roll out. In year 1, it's mostly project setup, community mobilization, building trust between different actors, conducting the household survey, the child census, and other school surveys to identify all out-of-school children. So that's roughly year 1. Year 2 to 5 goes into bringing all the out-of-school children back into school, achieving 100% transition rates. So basically making sure that everybody who is in school remains in school, promoting inside classrooms, promoting grade appropriate learning, and finally training and involving the community and local administration in school government. And the last mature years are focused on advocacy with the district and state government, making sure that the community is ready to lead future initiatives, supporting the village council in advocating for education at higher admin levels, and obviously ensuring the completion of secondary education for a whole generation of children. So roughly most blocks will follow this timeline, but it can vary depending upon the context or proximity to previous project areas and so on. Okay. How much time? Oh, okay. Since we only have 15 minutes, I'm going to go a bit fast on the impact highlight, just mentioning the few big ones. So the biggest is that till now we have brought back 80,000 children who were out of school, and we have almost close to 7,000 habitations have been declared as child labor-free zones. So that means that every child in these 7,000 habitations is in school and attending regularly. The transition rate in our area is quite high; it's almost 100%. Close to 500,000 children have participated in our various learning interventions. So whether it be foundational or middle school, or even like I spoke about the bridging centers, they have their own learning programs and so on. And yes, so some of our interventions have also been adopted by the state government. So we had facilitated successful camps in schools to provide biometric IDs for kids because children who are getting denied enrollment into schools because they did not have these IDs. And so we sort of set up these special camps in school. And now this initiative has been taken up by the state, and they now do it before every academic season. Okay, I'll just talk a little bit here. So one of the biggest changes that we have seen, and yes, kids are in school, yes, they are learning well, but the biggest change that we have seen is that institutions are working better. So what that means is government schools in these areas are opening on time. Teachers are, coming to school regularly. Their behavior towards kids inside classrooms have changed. They are open to adopting new pedagogies, and they're collaborating with communities. Like this is maybe in other areas this is supposed to be there, but this doesn't exist in rural areas in India. And then in terms of local self-governance institutions, previously inactive committees which were supposed to work for education and health have now become active. They are advocating for education. They are asking for new schools, new teachers, more funding, and so on. And finally, the community-based organizations. So school management committees, the ECD centers also have their own monitoring committees. And then for each village, we set up these voluntary child rights protection committees who also sort of work towards, basic child rights, like no child marriage, no child labor, and so on. These community-based organizations are also now sort of fulfilling their responsibility. So let's skip over that, yeah, so see, these are some of our current knowledge partners. So like I mentioned, especially for learning and pedagogy, we are partnering with various reputed institutes in India and abroad for improving science and math teaching, and also, for bringing in transversal skills, so like computational thinking competency, STEM learning, and we do have a partnership with the University of St. Andrews, Scotland, for evaluating some of our interventions also. So I thought I'll give you a couple of examples of the kind of research partnerships we have had, and we are okay. So when the pandemic happened, schools closed in this area, especially government schools, for roughly 2 years. So they were, in theory, like doing a digital program, but internet penetration in this area is roughly 15%. So this was virtually absent. So in this time, we launched a hybrid intervention combining digital and physical components. So we worked with, I think, around like 4,000 volunteers who actually reached out to kids, roughly 135,000 kids across 5,500 villages in 2 states. And these kids were given self-directed tasks. It wasn't basically following a curriculum, but they were given self-directed tasks covering, various things like languages, math, science, history, arts, climate change, COVID-19, and so on. Oh no, so 2,500 local volunteers and 700 aspiring teachers. So with the University of St. Andrews, and this was funded by the Scottish Funding Council grant, we did an evaluation of this intervention, and what we found was that over 6.5 months, children's test scores actually improved by an average of 1.27 standard deviation, and especially for kids who had started at the bottom. This one is about sustainable STEM education. So we are partnering with University of Turku, Finland, in integrating Finnish pedagogies in science and math curricula for grades 6, 7, and 8, and government middle school. This partnership is funded by the Tata Steel Foundation and also Finnish embassies. So the program started as a pilot in 20 schools. It was scaled up to 100 middle schools last year, and now we have scaled it up again to 725 middle schools, impacting 68,821 students. So in this case, the researchers from Finland help us in not just creating content like tasks for the kids, but also in training our teachers to deliver this task. And this one is still in planning. So the foundational learning intervention that I was talking about. So what we are doing is we have hired 4,500 volunteers work with us in supporting government teachers in implementing the foundational literacy curriculum inside schools. So what they do is they will touch base with teachers twice or thrice a week, and then they will help them in whatever is needed, in teacher training, in supporting them in admin tasks, in helping them teach. So this is kind of giving them some extra support. So with the Institute for Physical Studies in London, we are sort of planning to do a field experiment examining how a comprehensive program. So So where you are not just focusing on improving learning inside the classroom, but you're also focusing on community mobilization and working with local administration for improving access, because it has two prongs, right? Like you have to make sure that kids are actually coming to school, and then inside schools you have to improve learning. So if we take this kind of a comprehensive, holistic program, what's the impact of that in helping children in tribal areas achieve foundational literacy? So this field experiment is still in the plans. How much did that? 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to skip the fourth. I think just lastly, I just want to talk about how you guys can work with us, collaborate with us, and I say this for students, but I think this is valid for researchers as well. So, you know, like you can undertake field studies within our operational areas. You know, you can use our initiatives as real world case studies, as Marshall has already done in his lecture. You can collaborate with us to design innovative, culturally responsive curricula and teaching methods for particularly this type of people. You can pilot new teaching methods or approaches and assess their impact. For people who are interested in long-term longitudinal impacts, this is a very, I would say this is, you know, a great thing to work with Aspire, because the projects are quite long, 7 to 10 years. So you could, a cohort that you start, you could follow it for at least 10 years. You can also engage in participatory action research, working closely with tribal and rural communities to co-create solutions. Yeah, I mean, for researchers, I mean, again, it's the same thing. You can partner with us to document and evaluate some of the innovative things that we have been doing in revitalizing government schools. We are also very open to testing new approaches in pedagogy, child development, health, nutrition, early childhood care and learning. You know, we are looking for partners to critically review our current set of interventions so that, you know, when we do the next round, if there's anything to improve, we would be glad to take that input. And obviously, co-author papers with us. And it goes beyond saying that we are very happy to partner, you know, in funding applications. And we are also happy to introduce other higher education institutes. And I think Sussex already has connection to a lot of institutes in India, so they won't need that. But we are very happy to make those connections as well. And in terms of areas of interest, bear in mind, it's a very non-exhaustive list. In some sense, sometimes I feel like whatever you imagine in education, you can do it with that. Yeah, so I won't go through the list, but yeah. Okay, bonus. Then, would you want to add something today? Something I missed?
No, I think it's okay. There are 2 points that I wanted to add. One, you said that the village education register, that's a tool to basically monitor and see how children are progressing. But every week they go to schools, the parents, school management committee, and they head count of children. And once they find some children were missing for 1 or 2 days, they'll immediately follow up. So there is a very intense interaction. Second thing I'd like to say that when we entered the area and we talked to teachers, they all felt very frustrated. It was not one community. You talk to the community, they were very hostile towards the teachers. You talk to teachers, they were blaming community. Each one was frustrated with the situation and they didn't know how to get out of it. So the whole challenge was, how do you bring them together and in a positive mindset, create a positive mindset? They all work towards change. How do they change the situation? So one basic principle we applied when we trained community, and they were full of grievances, the list of grievances they had. And we said, look, are you serious? Do you think there is any other way that you can? Do you have any option? And if you really want to change, we said there's one principle. First, do something to change the situation. It can be small. But once you have done this, then you talk to others. I think this worked like a magic. Once they did something in the school, whether even cleaning something or arranging water or trying to, bring children to school and then talking to teachers, it has such a kind of impact, that they were taken very seriously, not that somebody was criticizing. So today, if you look at from that hostility when nobody trusts, like each one were blaming everyone, today there's a complete harmonization. The panchayat, the parents, the teachers, and the administration, they're working together with a lot of hope and a lot of energy to change the situation. And change has been like not one. Kartika was saying about school development plan. Today, the panchayats have been able to access almost 175 crore fund for their school development. They have been recently, I was visiting, they have been able to, in some states of India, if you go to the southern states, there are public buses, government buses, which are available for children free of cost to travel to school. But these states, they didn't have. They, in the last few months, when we were talking about, they have been able to mobilize 151 buses, which carry children to their schools and colleges. So continuously, as Kartika said, we are just facilitating because these institutions have a role. The school management committee had to perform its role. Teachers had certain role. The administration had certain role. The Panchayati Raj institution, local self-government, and they were not connecting with each other. They were frustrated. They were trying to blame each other. Today, they're all working in harmony, and you can see the great change that's happening place. And it's very important to capture that, how it is happening. In a situation where almost everybody had given up in private, they say it can't be done. This is a ray of hope that is a large scale. Schools are changing, community, children, their families. The kind of impact you can see the children who have joined after 4 years, 3 years, they're in labor. And they joined this RBCs and now they're doing, all of them got first class in the 10th board. Many people are asking, what did you do with these children? The kind of inspiration they have, the kind of change that you see, and their relationship with the child becomes student. It's very important point. Parents of a illiterate child and parents of a child who's studying, they become very different. The parents change, the family changes, the whole society. Today, the whole society has adopted a norm where they are determined that there will be no child in their area who will not be in school and they don't complete grad there. It's not that they send them to school, but that normative change in the society, it has happened because of that need to be captured, that how it has happened. We know how it has happened, but there's a normative change in the society. They cannot allow any child working. They will put posters, they'll go visit dhabas, they'll visit hotels. If there's any child found working, they will immediately intervene and ensure the child has a place in the school. That change that every child, the proper place is in a full-time school and they must complete 10 years education is a great change that has happened, normative change in the society. There are many more things I can say, but from a deadlock and a frustrating environment where everybody was feeling hopeless, today they're all excited. And one example we had this Finland team coming every year, 4 professors that come. They said, we have worked across the world in Africa and many places. He said, the kind of energy and hope, inspiration that I find among children and among the volunteers and teachers, I don't find any others. And they said, if you give us 2 years to work with them, like we train our teachers, there'll be miracle. So you can see a very visible change that's happening in the society. One generation in few years will be completing, there'll be nobody who wouldn't have completed grade 10. And that will have a larger impact on the society. So it's not about just educating children, it's also about doing something basic which will have a larger implications for the society. Thank you. I'll leave it here because I think we have crossed our time limit.
Yeah, we have more time for questions. So now we'll just take in questions from the audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Kartika. Thank you, sir. That was incredibly rich, insightful, and very, very detailed. It gave us such good insights in the workings of Aspire, your problematic sort of strategies, and the myriad of interventions that you do across the Indian rural states and districts. So thank you for that. And I'm sure there's a lot to unpack for our audience in this room because everything related to education that you said, we talk about it in our everyday discussions. I think there's lots to ask Kartika. So what we'll do now is a 5-minute Sussex buzz. We turn to the person next to us. We reflect on Kartika's presentation, what she just said to us, and then get those questions, your reflections, pointed, sharp questions. 5 minutes. We're back. There may be no questions. So we look at the questions. I can hear them. Yeah. Should we ask Kartika a few of those questions? Should we take a few questions and then go into answering them? Who wants to start? Linda.
Thank you for the amazing work you're doing. My colleague and I were just asking, have you faced any resistance in regards to the work you're doing in your community? And then number two, is there any negative effects of the amazing work you're doing? Kind of like that.
Yeah, I just, Dara, I don't know if you can hear this. So,
Should we take a few?
yeah, take a few.
Yeah. Okay.
Me? Yeah. You mentioned that these communities typically depend on like traditional farming. They don't have things like tractors, but they're also trying to prepare them for like 21st century skills and technology integration. So how does that translate when they finish school into their local community?
David.
Similar to the question, previous questions, so kids from the rural area, how does their culture, especially from the point of language, how does that fit into like the most 21st century capacity building kind of the city kind of vibe? Like how does that fit into all of that, like language muscle or culture or something?
Okay. Should we start with these three and then I come back?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know my code. There, are you there? Can you hear the questions?
It was mute. I said I couldn't hear it properly. If you can repeat, you answer it, and if you can repeat, and I can.
Yes. Yeah. So the first one was about, have we faced any resistance from the community when we were beginning this program? And I think you've already mentioned that a bit before, that initially when we went into the area, there's all sorts of resistance. There's resistance towards, there's a fatigue towards NGOs as well, that, oh my God, they come, they will just fill in their registers, or they will come and do something and then go away after a few years. So, it does take time to mobilize and, convince the community to start working with us. Of course, it has become easier for us to do it over time, because the way we are expanding is sort of contiguous. So the first block, 6 blocks we went in, it was quite hard. It took a year to even set up the first school and so on. But in the newer blocks, because we have, references sort of from the older blocks, so what happens is the teachers, the village elected members, and everybody who got trained in the first few blocks, they become the trainers for the next one. So we normally do exposure visits. So every time we are in a new area, we will bring the teachers, we will bring the village council members to the older areas and let them hear from their own peers. So that has really helped us in dealing with some of this resistance. And Linda had an interesting question, and I don't know, has there been any negative effect of our program in the community? Can we see anything negative that has happened?
Yeah, if I can come back, can just add, you see, the biggest challenge, as Kartika, I'll address both. The biggest challenge that one faced about communities' faith in NGO, not having faith, and that they not having hope that it can be changed. They were so overpowered by the situation. But more than that, the appointment has been in the beginning a bigger challenge, appointing the staff, because there's so much unemployment that you get calls from the MLAs, the ministers, saying there are 4 people, please appoint them. And if we do that, then we are opening Pandora's box. So there are very clearly laid down process who can join this program. So this has been a big battle. And then we have now settled that. People know that they can't do, and we will stick to the process. As Kartika said, once these things are practiced, they have seen how we work. Now when new area we go, it's become much more easier now because they also have the same set of questions, whether it can be done. They don't really have a faith. What we do now today, rather than talking, we bring them to the older area where program has happened, and they host, the communities host them. And we don't talk to them. Today, the government teachers, government employees, the panchayat, they are the community volunteers. They are talking, explaining them, showing them their schools, their other kind of work that they have done, which is much more convincing. They realize that, okay, it's the same situation, same kind of condition. When they describe how they were there in the past and how they have changed, and that is much more convincing, and that is really creating hope, and people are coming forward. Negative things, we have, I don't know how to put it, but a lot of challenges, areas, especially, I don't think anything negative that has happened, but the challenges are many more. When we have children in the RVCs, residential preschools, these are like hostels full time. Currently, we have 56, around more than 5,000 children. Most children are malnourished and have severe health problems. And it's almost like, I won't call it negative, but a big challenge that almost every week there's somebody in the hospital. And we have to take care of that, ensure that the parents are informed, everybody is there. Initially, when we had in this RVCs or few places, in villages also, snake bites. And you don't find that the public health system that was there in the called primary health center, they didn't have even anti-venom serum. And when people don't believe, had no faith that they can go to the doctors, they will do something, and there were 1 or 2 deaths in the area, not in the hostel. So we organize community and the demand. Now you go there, you'll get anti-venom serum available there, and they're also aware that they can use. So there have been many challenges. Sometimes these areas are also very civil unrest area. There is an extremist violence group. And there you sometimes feel serious threat that they don't allow you to enter the area. But everybody who comes to the town or visiting offices, they become suspect for the extremists. That they don't want anybody to come, and they feel maybe they may be police informer. So there have been challenges that our staff has been detained, threatened, sometimes very harsh. For 12 hours, they have been confined to a room and saying that you don't enter in this area. But all the while, it has been the local community who intervene and who assert and who now support the program. Otherwise, it's difficult to work even for a government. There are almost 100 villages in these areas where the government can't enter. They don't enter them. Because you have to walk for 4 hours or 5 hours, crossing rivers and all. But I won't put it a negative. I will call it that there are challenges, and we have learned how to engage and overcome those. And,
yeah, I would put it as the more you work in this area, the more things you see that, yes, we are working on education, but health and nutrition is also so important. Like a hungry child is really not going to learn anything. It's good. So there's so many other things where there is a need for improvement. There were 2 questions sort of related. They were about, if it's not true, that the children here are coming from very rural, tribal backgrounds, and their parents have been farmers and practicing primitive agriculture, and we are focusing on giving them advanced learning, 21st century skill, transversal skills, and so on. What happens next? So apart from farming, the other big employers in this area is the mining industry. And you do have a lot of corporates, you do have plants, and there's lots of industry and employment related to that. They don't hire tribal people because they don't have the skills. In fact, Tata Steel in our last meeting said that where we would like to hire people from, this area or program and so on, but, their CVs don't have the skills that we need. So so I think this generation, the one that we are helping, hopefully will get access to more opportunities in this area. But to your point about loss of tribal culture and languages and so on, that's a very, it's the truth, it's a fact, it's a reality in this area that even though we are incorporating a lot of, local knowledge into the pedagogy and teaching, once they actually get out of school and colleges and go out into the world, I mean, it's basically sort of lost or gets mixed into the urban environment. Most of the area that we work in is actually 95% rural. There aren't any sort of urban areas as a city. I mean, there are like towns or districts which are slightly urban-ish. But if these kids don't decide to migrate out to big cities in India, it's quite homogeneous in that sense.
So we have 3 questions in the room. We have Shwe, Boris, and Jan, but we also have 3 questions online.
Should
So Shwe,
give
you
the
would,
online people a chance.
yes. So Shwe and then online.
Okay.
Firstly, we are impressed that the approach you made, because that was really sustainable, instead of you taking a position to advocate the change, the local regional people make that change to, advocate for the change. So that was really sustainable. The question is about, we saw the mention about the child labor free zone. How was it evaluated? How do we know it's really a child labor free zone? And in terms of another question, a follow-up question relating to that is child labor is also a source of family income. So how people make sure that, people or local government or regional government, how they make sure those families have basic needs?
Yeah.
That's good. Boris?
My question is really close to that.
Okay.
It was actually that it was asking if there are, because child labor obviously awful, but it also happens normally because of poverty. And so I was going to ask, are there any measures to support these students in school?
Oh, in terms of economic.
Yeah, maybe. I think about preschool meals or transport.
Yeah.
And then Shwe.
Yeah, there's one on child labor that we could just
There's
take
one.
over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kartika, there is one question about child labor
I-
and family
Yeah, I'll
income.
also repeat the ones. So basically, and I'll give this to you because it's one of your favorite things to talk about.
So,
Yeah.
let's take the online ones. We can
Okay.
answer them together. So, there's a related question that Oroma is asking, which is about rural Uganda,
Yeah.
where I grew up. Children's contributions to the household were vital for family survival. The authorities often define this as child labor. I'm curious how does Aspire define child labor in the communities you work with? Is it similar to situations like mine in Uganda? Now that you have successfully eliminated child labor, what alternatives have you provided to support family survival?
Yes.
Subhasini is saying, thanks for a wonderful presentation, which is about positive developments in the country. I want to understand about the presence of private schools in the region, especially local private schools. And Sabarish is asking about impact, the programmatic impact of Aspire's program on learning, and what have been generalizable insights of Aspire's evaluations.
Okay. Yes. So, Graham, do you want to take the question about child labor and loss of income?
Yeah.
So, it was asked, how do we certify the child labor free zones? How can we see that it's actually happening in reality?
Yeah. So I read the question. One is, how do we define child labor? You see, it's very simplistic term. Operational definition. We had a law in the country which called Child Labor Prohibition and Regulation Act. Listen it carefully. Prohibition and regulation. It talked about prohibiting in certain areas which are hazardous, regulating in certain areas where the child labor can be allowed. That was the law. There was a lot of critique because what is hazardous, what is not hazardous. There was a distinction between home-based and non-home-based, the dignity of labor, all those discussions, and it became, I can give you an example. It was seen as under the Factories Act. So you become a factory if you are mechanized, there is a power connection. So what happens? The loom industry, they distributed these looms to the household, and children will work on the looms in their own homes. and they wouldn't be called child labor. So we went through all this. Match industry, they will divide this job to agarbatti making, which is what is called.
Incense sticks.
Yeah. So these were all to circumvent these laws, people found their own ways. What we say, for us, every child who's not in school, full-time school, either they are already child labor or the potential child labor. The only way you can prevent child labor is by putting them in school, full-time school. School is not about just learning, it protects them from many kind of problems. During the pandemic, we found there were sexual violences. There were other kind of exploitation that happens. So it protects many rights of the children. So for us, when every child comes to school, they continue to attend school at least 80%, and for a certain period of time, then the community has, as Kartika was saying, in the village education register, they also do head count in school every week. Based on that, the entire community will bring the data, how much, whom is out of school, who is now in school, and everybody, at least for 6 months, have continued in school. They will have a public function. They will share the entire data with the entire community. It's also public audit, and then declare that their village or their habitations or their panchayat has become a child labor free zone. They don't declare, they also take a pledge to maintain it. So this is the process to do it. For us, it's simple. If child is not in school, he's going to be a child. If not today, tomorrow. So the only way is to prevent that. It's also operational, so doable. So that's what we define when do it. About the earning, I think this is a very big myth, I'll tell you. I know that children will earn something, will add to community, but also when the children are in work, then the adults are unemployed. And children work for 1/5 or 1/10 of and 1/3 of they are paid very little. The father will be unemployed and the son will be employed. In many cases, you will find that. It has been a long debate if the poverty brings child labor or child labor brings poverty. It's like a banyan tree. Sometimes you have too many roots and you are not able to identify which is the primary root or secondary root. The problem is you have to break this cycle, then children must come. And we have seen changes in areas where child labor eradication happened, adult employment, agriculture pattern changes, agriculture labor, if there is a shortage, they will go for another kind of agriculture pattern. They will start doing something else. So it has implications for the society, for the economy. And I think society it's never been so sufficient income that the family can survive on child income. It's been perpetuating. They work in kind of industries. By the time they're 30-year-old, they can earn full wages. They are unwell. They die at 40. In Bengal industries, when you have many industries where children are falling sick and they're child labor. So it's a trap. We believe that their work places, the school, full-time school, the society must do. If the families need certain support, that's the government's responsibility to provide support. We have many social welfare schemes. Those families have to be covered under that rather than putting onus on children that they have to earn for the family. That's non-acceptable for us. And I think whole society should reject it. Children's places in school, full-time school, that's the way things have to change. And I said, this is the kind of normative change that we want in society to happen. It's happening. Thank you. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, in terms of what you said, there is midday meal program in almost all states in India. There is a provision for free cycles for tribal girls. So all these, different initiatives do exist. But of course, there's so many hurdles before a kid can actually access sometimes documents, sometimes they don't know about it, sometimes it's been, there's corruption at the village council and all that money has gone away. So for us, it's also making sure that, yes, we are taking the child away from labor market, but we also want to make sure that all these other support, like free, meals and the fact that books should not cost anything for 6 to 14, even if there should not be a fee for uniforms, there should not be a fee for if you lack any documents. So all of these things you also have to activate at the same time to make sure the system works. It really takes a village to make sure that a child is going to school and learning. And this, I don't know, do you want to take this, how about the presence of private schools in the region, especially low-fee private schools?
Yeah, the very in these areas, you see, private schools are open where you can earn some profit, or there are people who can afford to pay. So if you go to this area, almost negligible. There are schools run by some religious trusts, basically, and those have a very separate agenda. And some children do go there, but once the government school functions well, and most of them will join government schools. That's been the history. And another thing I wanted to add, you see, in more than 7,000 villages, we haven't found any parents really resisting. There can be one or two cases of child marriages where we have faced problem that parents will, so single parents are saying, I want to marry my daughter, don't insist on studying. This community who ensures there collectively, it can't be done, it's illegal. So there is a community pressure, sometimes there is a motivation. But I don't think any area in the remote jungle we have gone, any parents who said who don't want to educate their children. The simple reason they have seen that anyone who have been able to get out of the poverty trap, it has been because of education, that they see their neighbors, others doing well. So education is something, there's a huge demand from the community. There's no exception. The parents have come on their feet, they have just said that we want our children to get educated. Somehow they don't know how to negotiate with the schools and administration, the first generation learners especially. And if you provide support, there will be no exception. They want their children to get educated. That's been our experience.
There's one more on Parliament.
Yes, so maybe we could share the impact of Aspire program on learning. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's in your slides. You
Yes,
covered it
yeah,
quite
I just
detailed.
didn't get to that.
So we can do that.
Yeah.
There's more questions I know in the room. Quickly, Janet and then Pedro.
So my question, when you were speaking, I heard you say that when you go to these blocks, when you're done with your training, you hand over to the community leaders and people to take on from them. So I wanted to ask if there's like, for your monitoring and evaluation, to ensure that the quality is consistent even after you've gone, right? So is there like a train the trainers program, maybe once in 3 months, you go back and check on the teachers to ensure that they're still maintaining the quality? That's one. Also, I was thinking, I wanted to be sure if there are systems in place to ensure that after giving them this education, maybe we can connect these students to jobs or something to ensure that the impact is sustained within the community. And also if there's anything that is being done for their families as well.
Thank you. That's such a great presentation. My question was really, if you could really speak to the founder, the Tata Steel Foundation, you said, right?
Yes.
And I asked this because I'm really interested in the political economy of the education that you're doing it, and how, and you kind of in your talk said that there is lack of workforce in mining education. I want to know how education is been entangled some of these extractions, appropriations of the wealth and resources, and what are the tension that this creates between the mining and the communities, and where does the pressure comes? And I think that's really important, because I think this model has been criticized, and we know around the world these companies have been affiliated with some of the epistemic and non-epistemic injustices, and also supporting educational initiatives. And I just want to, in your case, how does the tensions? Thank you very much.
Question, Dalmi. Final, last question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask about how you address the power imbalance between the trainees and the trainers. So, and by this, I could mean the organization, people who represent the organization and the local.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
All right. Well, so the first question. So we have not exited an area yet. So we started in 2015. Ideally, 2024, 10 years have happened, but because of COVID and the 3 years of disruption, what we saw was that actually the kids learning and everything just went back a couple of years. So even in the earliest of blocks, we have not exited. So there aren't any trainers which are doing this independently, and we have to go back and monitor them as well. The second part was about, sorry, just 1 minute. Second question was?
What are you doing for their families?
No, it was, to connect them with jobs and other good. Yes, so the first cohort of kids who have passed grade 10 and so on. So there are these technical institutes in the area, and we have been connecting them with those institutes, like helping negotiate with the institutes in itself, like sort of, in some sense, do a bit of relaxed criteria for admission of these particular kids, especially the kids which come from our residential courses, because these are the very challenging, from challenging backgrounds. So we have had some say in that, but this is something we have just recently started working on, because it's the first time we are faced with, oh, we have now all these high school graduates, and what next? Because you really can't stop there and be like, yeah, so this is something that we're still trying to work on and figure out.
1 minute.
Yes, and well, it's not great, but Deram, do you want to take this question on Tata Steel Foundation, and how do we negotiate the fact that they are a mining industry and they are an extractive or exploitative presence in that area, but at the same time they are funding one of the biggest education programs in India, and how do we see this?
Yeah, so we have as a country, we have a rule now, a law, that every corporate has to put 2% of their profit as is called CSR, corporate social responsibility. So they have to spend. So the point is that I'm sure if there are mining and there are industries, definitely there will be exploitation if we look at labors and all that, but that continues. The point is, here, are you able to help with the CSR money, the generation which have been deprived of education? I'll give you a few examples. When the first Tata Steel industry opened 100 years back, more than 100 years back, if you look at how many tribals got job there, none. They were migrating to the tea gardens in Assam, in Darjeeling, and the people were coming from all over the world, and especially from the India. They were joining because they were non-skilled. Nobody thought that they should be skilled and provided job. Today, the change that has happened, today these industries can't afford not to provide job. So they have everybody who has been displaced during the setting of the project or mining, they are being skilled and given job. So there is a change now happening because of awareness and consciousness. And the larger question is, they are not capable, they don't have skill. Today, what we are doing is preparing people with a knowledge and skill. And if they're there, they can't really tell them that you can't get job. But from the first cohort,
I'm so sorry, I'll have to stop you there, just because we've run out of time. And I know this is a longer conversation to be had, and there's more questions to be answered. So Kartika is still here. Yes. And we'll keep this conversation going. We're meeting now somewhere else. We're going to the CI room, Barbara, for a post-seminar.
Could join there.
Yes,
Okay,
oh
fine.
my God.
Yes, so we will, we'll share again a link for the next meeting, which is a small group meeting.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining.
thank you.